up. And as Paul said, I am from Bemidji, born and raised, and I now am in Minneapolis. Went to the University of Minnesota and just loved it here. And so I am still in Minneapolis, but I make it up to Bemidji quite a bit. And I worked at North Country Business Products for 15 years, which is of course based in Bemidji. And through that time, I just kind of found out what I liked and what I didn't like in a career, and kind of made my way over to Keystone here in the last 6 months, and has been just a really great transition for me. And I've been having a lot of fun, and I get to do things like this and talk with people about leadership and about helping make our companies better, stronger, more resilient organizations. And a lot of people think about changing careers in the middle of a global pandemic, and it seems a little crazy. But this is what I was called to do. I have absolutely no question that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I really, really enjoy it. So the fact that I get to be here talking with all of you is truly a treat. So I appreciate you guys attending, and I look forward to the conversation. So again, I know there's some people who just joined. If you can pull down from the chat area, there's a link you can copy and paste it into your browser, and then just do the open in desktop, and then save it onto your computer. And then as we go through this, there's a couple different areas where we'll do the worksheet. Now, again, if you want to print it out, if that's your style, that works too. So with that, let's get started. So the title of the workshop is Conscious Leadership for the Here and Now. Some people talk about the new normal, and I am just very opposed to using the term new normal. To me, things are always changing. Guaranteed, the last 6, 7, 8 months have been quite a bit of change, and a lot has been adjusting from day to day. But that's how life is anyways. There's always changes, there's always new things happening, and we always need to stay on top of our leadership, on top of our companies, on top of our teams, on top of our families, every single day. So there's always going to be change, and there's always going to be something different going on, and we always need to be prepared for that. So conscious leadership is a topic that I think is really important to be talking about, because it starts with each one of us. And then after each one of us is focusing on this, that's when we can spread it out to our employees, to our teams, to our whole organizations. And that's when we really start to see impact in our businesses, which I know is where a lot of us need to be right now, is how do we level up our businesses? How do we get back in the game? How do we get back to thriving? And that's what this is about. And it's about starting with yourself and about starting with your own leadership. So with that, let's dive in. So conscious, and you can see my screen. Can someone just confirm that?
Yes.
See leadership. Okay, perfect. So conscious leadership, leadership has been evolving for years and years and years. And what it is and what is needed is constantly changing, as I was talking about. And this concept now that I'm talking about with conscious leadership is really about being aware of who you are, being aware of how your actions impact others, and then how those actions impact those around them. And so it's really about understanding how it impacts all the stakeholders that are a part of our organization. So whether that's your employees, your teams, your customers, your vendors, your suppliers, this is impactful for anyone that interacts with you and your business. And so it's not about hierarchy, it's not about rank, it's not about any of those things. It's about really building deep trust within your organizations, which we'll get to. What does that look like? What does that mean? What are some tactical things I can do to build trust? We'll get there today as well. We've seen in with the clients that we work with, so we work with clients on business strategy, on their culture, and on their people strategies. And what we have seen within the organizations that we work with is that leaders have been born during this time, and then other leaders have been very, very deeply exposed for their weaknesses. And so this is really bringing out, when you're in times like this, when you're in crisis mode and you're just trying to trudge through every day, you really get a picture for who people truly, truly are. And that's what we're seeing come out in a lot of organizations. So the definition that comes from a book called Conscious Capitalism, the definition for conscious leadership out of that book is that conscious leaders focus on the we instead of the me. And they really look at inspiring and bringing out the positive transformation in leaders. And they're not about top-down leadership. It is about results, but it's about the way we go to get those results. It's not a demanding, it's not a my way or the highway kind of an approach. It's really looking at what's a higher purpose of our team, what's a higher purpose of our business. What are we here to do? Not to sell a widget or to sell a service or to whatever it might be, but what value are we really providing? And then helping everyone understand that that's what the value is, and that's what we're working toward. Not to sell X amount of revenue, not to get X amount of profit. It's about how can we add value to those that we are selling to or providing a service to. And it's really, conscious leaders are an integral role in our businesses. They're an integral role in creating a purposeful culture in our companies, and they're the ones who really start moving the business forward. And if you get nothing else out of today, it's that it starts with you. And it takes one person to be focused on this and to really believe in the value and the power of leadership. And then once that one person does it, it spreads like wildfire. And so that's really what I want you to get. And there's a bunch of skill sets that are needed for this, which we'll dig into. The evolution of leadership has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of different management styles and philosophies, and then management turned to leadership, and now leadership, I think, is turning into this conscious leadership and having a deeper purpose around what you're doing and why you're doing it, and helping everyone understand that. But what I really think happened over this last, 8-9 months has been the speed at which we need to adapt our leadership abilities is faster than we've ever seen before. The world was spinning pretty darn fast prior to this, and then now it just seems like it's in, kind of full throttle. And so the need to keep up with this, to change our expectations around leaders, has never been greater. And really digging into areas that we might not be comfortable with, and that's what some of conscious leadership is about too, which we'll talk about today. So I'm sure some of you have seen this. This is the 5 dysfunctions of a team from Patrick Lencioni. There's nothing new here. Patrick Lencioni has written numerous books. I'd recommend all of them. And this one, The Good to Great, and then 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, he wrote back in the early 2000s. So again, these concepts aren't new, but what I'm doing is kind of taking a little different light on these with where we're at right now. So when you look at 5 dysfunctions of a team, the basic most thing that every team must have, every organization must have, is trust. And so how do you go about building trust, and how do you go about creating that within your organizations is truly what's going to make you differentiate yourself from other companies out there. And so then the next step is, how do you go from being a good company that might get results to really being that great company? And I think there's multiple ways to do this. But I think what great companies can do is they can get to those results in a way that is cohesive, that there's teamwork, that it's built on and developed from the baseline of trust that you have within your organization. And if you don't have this bottom line of trust, you're not going to be able to truly grow and sustain your business. You might be able to get to a point where you're successful, but being able to hold that is not going to happen. And so there's 3 ways that we always talk about building trust that are pretty simplistic, quite honestly. The first one is by building relationships. And this is talking with your people, understanding what their concerns are, connecting with them, understanding where they're at, meeting them where they're at, helping them resolve conflict with issues they might be having. So just really being there for your people, and also giving them honest feedback to help them grow as well. And then the second way to help really build trust is through consistency. So being a role model, walking the walk, talking the talk, following through on what you said you were going to do, following through on your commitments and your promises. That's how you start to build trust. And then the third way to build trust is through just using your good judgment and your expertise. So truly knowing your role and your job and being good at it, making good decisions, solving problems quickly. When you start to do these things, others begin to trust your ideas and your opinions, because they've seen you be successful and they've seen you be consistent, and they've seen you build these relationships time after time. So again, the 3 ways are building relationships, being consistent, and then using good judgment or using your good expertise. What I want you to understand is that you don't have to be perfect in all of these areas. There's a Harvard Business Review article that talks about building trust, and that if you can be average in these 3 areas, we're talking like 60% of the time, building relationships, being consistent, and using good judgment, that your results are going to be far beyond those who aren't using these 3 techniques to build trust. The issue is, as you start to dip below that 60% of the time doing these 3 things, then you really start to erode trust, and that's where things really start to break down. So good news, you don't have to be perfect at these. Bad news, you do need to work on them, and they need to be a focus every single day, but it doesn't have to be at 100%. So there is some room for wiggle room there, which is, I think, very, very reassuring. So let me give you an analogy here about how you can go from good to great and what that might look like. So I'm a big runner. I love to run. I actually ran the Blue Ox Marathon around Lake Bemidji. I think it was like 3 years ago, which is an awesome race. So I love to relate things to running. So I think of running a race in parallel with running a business. There's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of hills. There's a lot of wind that might come your way that you have to learn to deal with. And in the business world, maybe that's a global pandemic. Maybe that's needing to pivot your products, pivot your services, pivot your leadership team. Maybe it's a reduction in force that needs to happen within your organization. So there's always going to be things that are coming up as you're running this race of business. And there's really 2 ways that I think that you can get to the end of the race. And the first is that you're running as hard as you can. You get to the end, you get to the results, but you're exhausted, you're tired, and you probably feel alone. You had people along the way to help you get there, but it's really a results or bust mentality. And so you're not using the team to do this. It's really just about, let's get it done, let's get it done, let's get it done. We need results, and that's all you're focused on. The second way, and I think the better approach, the more sustainable approach, is you're still going to work hard. You're still going to be tired and sweaty when you get to the end of the race. But along the way, you've done the work, and you've worked hard together. You've cared about your team. You've done those 3 things to build trust. You've built relationships. You're conscious about how people are feeling and how their lives are interacting outside and inside of work. You're working together. You're communicating. You're open and honest about feedback. You're being creative with how you're getting things done. You're asking for input from others along the way. And you get to the end of the race just as, if not more, successful than when you just did the results or bust mentality. And the difference is that team is going to be sticking with you for years to come. I've told so many leaders that how you treat your employees now, in the midst of a global pandemic and numerous other crises that are happening around our world, how you treat them now and how you interact with them now is going to dictate how long they're going to stay with you and within your organization. And I come from HR, I come from the land of recruitment, and I know how hard it is to find good people, and I know how hard it is to keep good people. And so if we can have this team mentality, this building of trust, that's what's going to bring people to our companies and then keep people at our companies. So this is the difference of how good companies and great companies really get to that finish line, and how good leaders and great leaders really help to build that one by one within their organizations. So what's required of being a leader, and what skill sets are required to be a conscious leader in the here and now? Again, I don't want to use the term new normal. I want to use the term in the here and now. The here and now is always changing, because here is always, where you're at. It's a present moment. And so what do we need today to be successful? This is going to change. This could change in 5 months. But right now, here's what I believe and what I have seen within the companies that we work with, what really needs to be happening with our leaders. And so there's four different requirements I'm going to talk about. The first one is emotional intelligence. You probably heard about this. It's often referred to as EQ as well, for your emotional quotient, just like IQ, but it's for the emotional side, the more feeling side of our brain versus the intellectual side of our brain. So this is really, when I think about emotional intelligence, I think about this is the leader's capability first to understand themselves, to be in control of and be able to express their own emotions. And then that's the first half. The second half of emotional intelligence is being able to understand, relate to, and empathize with your employees' feelings and emotions. So it's understanding yourself and understanding your employees, sitting in their seats, seeing things from their perspective, asking them questions to get to an understanding of where they're at. And what Forbes actually is calling emotional intelligence the #1 leadership skill that all leaders need to have within the next 10 years. It's very, very important. It's not something that was used in the past. This is a newer leadership skill that's really coming to light and being seen as extremely, extremely important. Some actions that high emotional intelligent leaders might take: taking responsibility, taking ownership for things. If you mess up, saying you messed up. That doesn't make you wrong, doesn't make you bad, it makes you human. It's okay to mess up, and it's even better to admit those mistakes. Being curious, and we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but asking questions, understanding things, being open to new possibilities and new opportunities, not being stuck in the old way of doing things, but really being aware of what's around you and what other people are saying and bringing to the table so that you can bring that to your organizations. And it's really about feelings. And this, I sometimes lose people at this point, so stick with me here. Because feelings in the workplace often don't go together. They're often seen as two separate things, and they're really not, because we all have feelings every day, whether they're not good feelings, they're not bad feelings. They're just feelings. They are what they are. And it's been said, I was listening to this podcast, some psychiatrist talking about feelings, and that feelings go through this tunnel. They go in one side, you process them, you deal with them, and then they come out the other side. What happens with so many of us, and I am very guilty of this as well, is we get a feeling and we just keep it stuck in the middle of that tunnel. We push it down. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. We consider it a bad feeling. And so we don't want to deal with it. And so it just stays there. But at some point, that feeling, that emotion is going to explode out the other side of that tunnel. And almost always it happens at the wrong time and to the wrong people that aren't deserving of that. And so processing those feelings, understanding where they're at, is a really big part of emotional intelligence. And then also helping your people understand those feelings and work through those as well. And that it's okay to be frustrated right now. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel really, really mad that you're not having Thanksgiving with your family, which is the situation that I'm in. We canceled Thanksgiving with my family, and it's hard, and that's okay to feel frustrated about that. And some people think, well, other people are, getting really sick and they're dying or they're whatever, and I'm feeling bad about, not having Thanksgiving with my family. But it doesn't matter where you're at on that spectrum, because your feelings are your feelings and they're real. So understanding that and helping others understand that is a huge piece of emotional intelligence. The second leadership requirement for the here and now is being a leader as coach. So, if you think back to some of the best mentors, the best leaders, the best coaches you might have had, what were some of the things that they did to help you? Usually these coaches, they're investing in you. They're investing their time, their energy, their emotions into you. And what we typically see, the best leaders that are coaches, what we see them do, and we talk about the invite and challenge matrix. And so on one side you have invite going up, and on the bottom side you have challenge going out. So the best leaders, the best coaches are inviting you to come along. They're encouraging you to come along, but they're also not just making it easy peasy for you. They're challenging you. So on the challenge spectrum on the bottom, they're challenging you to try new things, to do things different. And so the more that we can invite our people and encourage them and challenge them along the way, that's when we get to that top right side of the matrix where we want to be on the high invite, the high challenge scale, to really move our people forward. People want to be challenged. The #1 reason why Gen Z and millennials are leaving organizations is because they're not able to use their strengths at the company. So the more you can challenge people to do things differently in the ways that they in their strength areas, the more successful you're going to see them be. So if you can look at yourself as a coach where you're really focused on helping the team, helping to bring the team together, helping to raise the level of your team, understand what their strengths are and focusing in on those strengths. That's what a good coach does. A good coach doesn't put a defensive player on offense. A good coach finds which defensive position that person should be in and puts them into that position. So really that's your job as a leader, is to be that coach, understand which position they're most successful at in order to win the game, and then put them into that role. So the third leadership requirement for the here and now is asking different questions. Number one, leaders need to be asking a lot of questions. You need to be curious. You need to understand where people are coming from. They're coming up with new ideas, or where they're coming to you with a complaint. It's not just about, oh, well, you know, that person's just always complaining. Ask different questions. Understand, where is that coming from? If you're asking the same questions, you're going to be getting the same results and the same answers. If you have a consistent problem that's happening time and time and time again, you need to be asking different questions to try to solve that in a different way. Otherwise, it's going to keep on happening. So let me give you an example about, you know, asking different questions. We talk about something with our clients called strength questioning. And and so an example of this would be, let's say you're a software company, you develop software, there's a big glitch in the software, and it's extremely impacting your customers. So a weak questioning approach would be, who did it, why they do it, how did it happen, you know, really getting frustrated and digging into the past, what happened in the past. Where strength questioning is more future focused. I understand that there's an issue here. What are we going to do to not let this happen again in the future? So instead of pushing your people back into the past and really getting bogged down by what has happened, let's think about what could happen. Be future focused, be growth oriented versus fixed mindset in the past. So how can we be growth focused? How can we resolve this in the future? How can we not let this happen again? It's a simple twist of the words that really keeps people's minds open. So when you push them into the past, it closes their minds and doesn't allow them to think as openly as and as creatively. So ask different questions in different ways to try to resolve the issues that might be out there. And then the other thing that we always recommend is asking why 5 times. If you don't know what questions to ask, you don't know how to ask something differently, just keep asking why. Okay, why did that happen? They'll give you a little something else. Okay, and why do you think that happened? Okay, and now why do you think that happened? And by the time you ask why 5 times, you're really going to get to what's at the root of the issues and what's really going on there. So the fourth leadership requirement for the here and now, and it's going to help you be a conscious leader, is the value of understanding the value of diversity. So this is a topic that's on the forefront of everyone's minds, and by no means am I going to claim to be an expert on diversity, equity, inclusion, but I do care deeply, and I'm very passionate about helping leaders understand the value of diversity and what it can do for their teams and what it can do for their companies. And one thing I do want to clarify is that diversity is not affirmative action. It is not about, let's have X amount of minorities, X amount of females, X amount of, you know, age, X amount of disability. That's affirmative action. Diversity is much, much broader than that. It's not about numbers. It's about having diverse insight, diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds. Yes, it is about diverse races and diverse ages and diverse people with disabilities and LGBTQ, you know, all of the things. But it's really, really broad as far as the vast amount of ideas that you can have in your organization. Diversity really is going to help bring your business into the future. Again, because the more opposing ideas or differing ideas that you have, the more it's going to challenge the way that you've always done things to help you change, to adapt to the here and now and push you into the future and keep your business alive as we move forward throughout the rest of this year and into next year and beyond. I really think that the future of leadership is about, and conscious leadership is about, seeking out these diverse opinions. So it's not just about letting it organically happen. You need to force this to happen, especially when we're in smaller cities where we really don't have the diversity that we might have in a bigger city, we need to be very conscious about pulling out different backgrounds, different ideas, different ethnicities as much as we possibly can, and making that happen within our companies. It's not going to happen just on its own. It has to be a focus. And so as a leader, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are bringing together a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences, and then also valuing those and really listening to and being open to those ideas and opinions when they bring those up within your companies. And so to me, you know, when you allow space for these innovative thoughts and ideas to happen, that's when you're going to see these unique solutions. And that's really the ultimate value of diversity, is it's going to push your company forward. It's going to give you new ideas and solutions to problems that you've maybe had for years and weren't sure how to solve. And now when you can bring in diverse experiences and backgrounds, you're able to really solve those issues if you're willing to go out and ask for those, seek those diverse opinions, seek those diverse solutions, and be open to the suggestions that people are giving you. So if we use those 4 leadership skills, emotional intelligence, so being stronger with your emotional feelings, being more conscious and more caring with your leadership with others, being a leader as coach, asking different questions in different ways, and then valuing and seeking out diversity. So if we're using those 4 skills, you truly are going to get business results by using this conscious leadership mentality and these conscious leadership skill sets. So it's really first, again, about being aware of how you impact the stakeholders around you. So whether, again, those are your employees, your customers, your vendors, your suppliers, it's this whole ecosystem of people that you are affecting with how your leadership is every single day. And so, you know, some of the biggest gains that I think people can get from this are huge. And so the very first one is high performance. So with this result, what I think you can do is do a lot more within your organizations with a lot less people, which is something we're all being faced with, and we all need to really focus on doing. And so it's been said that the average employee only uses 40% of their potential at work, 40%. So to me, we're leaving 60% of someone's abilities and potential on the table every single day. That's like having this huge stack of cash on your conference room table that you just go and light a fire to every single night before you leave the office. There's so much potential that's not being tapped into within our employees because we're not emotionally intelligent. We're not asking them what they want to do, what their strengths are, what they're good at. We're not paying attention to that because we are so focused on running that race and just results or bust mentality that we're not stepping back and looking at the team. How do I support this team? How do I strengthen the strengths of my team? And if we can do that, that's going to raise, of course, the level of performance within our employees. If we can even just raise that by 20%, if we can get them to 60% instead of 40%, think of what that can do for our business. And you really start pushing the envelope. What if we can get them to 80% of their potential every day? What's that going to do for our business? And how many less people are we going to need to run our business if people are running at full capacity? So I'm huge on strengths and really understanding what your strengths are. And then really, and there's going to be things that you're not good at and you're going to have to do in your job every day. Like that's just reality. But the majority of your time spent should be focused on things that you're good at. Because when you're focused on things that you're good at, you're usually passionate about those areas as well. And when you feel passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work. And so you might be working just as many hours, just as hard. But if one path, your kind of the results are bust and you're just kind of doing what you have to do and you're just doing it. Or if you're working that same amount of hours, but you're doing it with the things that you love doing, that you're passionate about doing, you understand why you're doing it and how it's helping the customers, you don't get as exhausted. You don't get as worn out when you're doing things that you're passionate about. So if understanding that for yourself, you'll get higher performance out of yourself. And then once you understand it for yourself, how do you understand that for your employees and understand where they're at and pushing them to be better? So that really is going to, again, start with yourself, raise it up for yourself and for everyone else. Sometimes within organizations, there's an element of fear. People are fearful that if they don't get results or they're being pushed to get results And the opposite might happen. When they're fearful, they might procrastinate. There might be conflict, might be lack of communication, stifling creativity and innovation. So it's exactly the opposite of what you want to be happening when there's fear, when it's a results or bust mentality. And so fear is not going to allow your high performers to come out of the woodwork and to raise from that 40% to 60 or 80% of their abilities every single day. So you need to do the opposite. Understand your strengths, understand your employees' strengths, and that's just going to really raise people up. The next business result that I feel is really powered by conscious leadership and some of the results you can get from doing these things is creative thinking and innovation. This is so important always, but it's really important right now when we really need to be looking at how does our business run? How does our business operate? How do we need to do things differently? How do we need to pivot and continue pivoting as we go into the end of this year, into the beginning of next year? And when we're conscious leaders, we're inspiring creativity. We're inspiring innovation. And when I say innovation, I don't mean like, developing the newest, high-tech widget. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about innovative ideas, people taking risks, people thinking outside of the box, solving our customers' issues a little differently than we have in the past, and really being creative with that. And as leaders, it's our job to inspire our people to do that. And if we're not inspiring them to do that, they're not going to do it. So if you want to see creative thinking, if you want to see innovation within your company, you really need to create that environment that people feel comfortable in doing so. And the environment that people feel comfortable in doing so is a positive, optimistic environment. So if we are just, trudging through and we're in this murky land that we don't know what's going on, we don't know what's going to happen next, and everything is, woe is me, then everything is woe is me. If we can shift our own perspectives and then help shift our employees' perspectives of, yes, this is hard. Yes, this really, really stinks right now. And yes, we have to change how we, execute this yet again. But here's why we're doing it. Here's where the greater purpose is. Here's the value. Here's the impact that we're providing with the service or product or whatever it is that we do as a company. And guess what? We're doing it together. We're doing it as a team in a way that we're trying to have as much fun as we have, be as positive and optimistic as we can be. And when we act in those ways, that's when creative thinking and innovation is really going to thrive. Innovation will not thrive in an environment that is negative and pessimistic and woe is me. So it's up to us as individual leaders to start creating that environment within our companies or within our teams. You do not need to be the CEO of the company to do any of this. You don't even have to be a formal leader, manager to do any of this. Any one of us in any position in our companies can take on these responsibilities, take on these leadership skill sets, and see these results come out, because these types of things spread. When people see you, really understanding what your strengths are and working towards those and being passionate and excited about what you're doing, they're going to be intrigued by that, and they're going to want to do the same thing as well. So this certainly can spread without being an actual leader within your company as well. And then the third business result that I think is powered by conscious leadership is the ability to solve the root issue of problems. This is huge. We have a saying here at Keystone when we work with our clients and our leaders to stop mowing dandelions. We've all done it. We've all seen it. Summer rolls around, the dandelions start popping up all over our grass. We go out, we mow them for 1, 2, maybe 3 days. It looks pristine, grass is green, and all of a sudden, these little dandelions start popping up all over our grass again. We cannot solve the issue of the dandelions unless we dig down to the root and get rid of the entire dandelion. And there's the same approach we need to be taking with solving issues within our company, is we need to dig down and understand what is the root cause of this issue. Don't solve for the symptoms. Don't just pop the head off of the dandelion and, oh, it's good for now. Solve the root issue so it's good forever. So you never have to deal with that problem again. It becomes Groundhog's Day, right? We have issues in our companies, and you all know what they are. Every week, same issue happens. Every month, the same issue happens. Time and time and time again. You have the same conversation every month. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to solve this? You come up with the same solutions every time because you're not asking different questions. You're not allowing for creativity and innovation to happen in your companies, and you're not digging down to the root cause of the issue. You're solving the symptoms that are on the surface level that everyone can see. What you need to do is dig down and understand what's beneath that. What is the root cause of that? And again, the number one way that I think to do that and why I've seen be successful is asking why 5 times. Continue asking, well, why did that happen? Okay, well, it affects the software glitch situation. Well, it didn't go through the proper testing that it was supposed to go through. Okay, there might be an issue there, but that's again root. That's a top level issue. That's not the root issue. Okay, so if it didn't go through the testing it's supposed to go through, why didn't it do that? Well, Susie didn't follow the checklist. Okay, there's an issue, but it's the top issue. Why didn't Susie follow the checklist? Well, she wasn't trained in on where to find the checklist. Okay, we're getting closer to a deep issue there. Why didn't Susie know where this checklist was? Why didn't Susie know? Why wasn't she trained in on where to find this checklist? Well, because the manager doesn't have an onboarding plan for new hires. Okay, so we're getting deeper into the root issues there. And guess what? When we find out that Susie's manager didn't have the onboarding plan figured out, if Susie's manager gets that onboarding plan figured out and follows that, guess how many other issues are going to be solved from getting down to the root cause of that one issue. So it's really cross-functional. You're going to end up solving numerous issues by solving the root cause of one issue. So I cannot tell you the importance of digging down into the root cause of issues and asking why 5 times to truly understand what's going on and solving for that. So you don't have to continue solving for the same thing time and time again. And the other thing too is when you're having these conversations with employees and you're asking them why 5 times, it's not getting defensive, it's not jumping down their throats and not blaming them for things that are happening. It's truly asking why and questioning to understand. It's not questioning to punish them or to make them feel bad, because when you do that, they're going to get defensive and the truth isn't going to come out and you're not going to get to the root cause of that. So the more open-minded you can be, the more, not necessarily reserved, but not jumping on people and getting defensive and holding judgments over them for what might have gone wrong, but truly just trying to solve the issue and knowing that if you solve the issue, it's not going to happen again, and then life will be good. People are not going to be open and honest if they feel like they need to be defensive or they feel like they're being judged. So it's up to you, again, as a conscious leader, to understand how your behaviors and actions and words are impacting others when you're going through these questionings. So where do we go from here? This is, and I never have any conversation with leaders without ending with, what do we do? What do we do next? It's great to learn about these things and get a better understanding of these things, but how are we really going to make a difference and make an impact on our leadership? And so that's what I really want to spend the rest of our time doing here, is digging into this a little bit more. I had posted on the chat, there was a URL. If you can copy and paste that into your browser, it should pull up, and then you should have the option to open it in your desktop app. So it'll open it up actually in Word, and then save it to your computer. Because again, this is just a shared document. So if all of us start typing in, it's going to show everyone's typings, and that's not the intent of this. So if you can open that up and save it onto your desktop or print it off, that works too. We're going to go through a few of these things here.
Are you able to repost? None of us are seeing the URL.
in the chat, did it go away?
I didn't see one in my chat, and it's looking like others aren't seeing that either.
Okay.
Chelsey, I think it's just because anyone who joined after you posted it.
Oh, sure.
Post right at 8 a.m. or before.
Yes.
Yeah, that could be it.
There we go. Okay. Why am I not seeing the chat? Oh.
Thank you. It looks like Paul Oh, and Paul and Chelsey.
They're both there. So as people are pulling that up and saving it to their computers, I just want to kind of talk through a couple of the things that are on this document here. So the first thing that I want to do is this super quick empathy, emotional intelligence assessment. There's a lot more of these kind of assessments online if you wanted to dig in deeper into this and understand a little bit more about your emotional intelligence level. But this is just a high level, kind of gut check of where am I at. So go through and answer these 6 questions to rarely, sometimes, or often. And I'll give you just a couple minutes to go through and do that. And then after you've done that, then just take a look below and kind of, identify where you fall within those ranges. And then just, self-determine. Do you feel like based on how you answer these questions that you have a high EQ, a moderate EQ, or a lower EQ? This is just for you. We're not going to discuss this out in the open. We're not going to share this with people. This is just for your own knowledge. Be honest with yourself where you feel like you're at based on this high level assessment. And then based on how you answer those 6 questions and based on what we've talked about so far today, what is one area that you feel you can start to improve today on your empathy and your emotional intelligence? So it could be one of those 6 things that's listed up there, or it could be something that that I discussed so far today. And now I go back to, where do we want to go from here? It starts with you. And if you want different results, you have to do something different. You cannot continue to do the same things that you've continued to do for years and hope for different results. That is a definition of insanity. We are not insane people. Sometimes it may feel like it, but we're not. So how do you choose to do something different? Empathy is one area. If you feel like you have a high EQ, great. But guess what? We always can get better because we're never going to be perfect at it. So maybe it isn't EQ. Maybe you feel like you're pretty strong within EQ. Great. What else can we do? If you go down to the next page, there are what I've kind of dubbed the tough questions. And so I would ask yourself to ask these questions and understand where you fall within each one of these. People often ask me, how do you really dig in and understand yourself and understand your emotions and understand emotional intelligence and all of this? And I am a huge fan of mindfulness and meditation. And some people, again, like when I start talking about feelings in the workplace, I start talking about meditation in the workplace, people kind of go, oh, no, here she goes. But meditation and mindfulness can mean 100 different things and can be done in 100 different ways. There is not a right way or a wrong way to be mindful or to meditate. You can take one of these tough questions that I have listed there and spend 5 minutes thinking about it. That's meditation. That's mindfulness. So it doesn't have to be this woo-woo, crazy, creepy, weird thing. It can be very, very simplistic. It can be sitting down in your office, shut the door, close your eyes, just think about one of these questions that's on this list and think through what that means for you as an individual. It can be something deeper than that too. It can be, there's so many mindfulness apps that you can get. Headspace is one, Insight Timer. If you have the Peloton or Peloton app, they have a ton of really great meditations on there as well. And so what these things do is allow your mind to take a break, take a nap without taking a nap. It's actually more rejuvenating than 5 minutes of meditating is way more rejuvenating than taking an hour-long nap. And so taking a few minutes every day, it doesn't have to be long, just to sit back and detach from what's going on around you is going to energize you. It's going to help your brain be more clear and more focused. It's going to help you kind of clear the fog and be more creative and more innovative. It truly is amazing the power that this can have. So again, 100 ways to do this. But what I would ask you is to dig in deep and get real with some of these questions. Understanding where you're at in the here and now, and then acting with consciousness and awareness as you move forward is a very simplistic start to being a conscious leader. Being aware of who you are, where you're going, why you're doing what you're doing is step one. Helping others around you, helping your employees, your coworkers, your peers understand the same thing is really step two. This does take some vulnerability. It takes people really wanting to learn and be open to growing and sharing and doing the work that it takes to get there. But the benefits that you get out of it as an individual, as a human being, and then the impact that it's going to have on others around you is, you can't put a dollar amount to that. You can't put a number to it. It is truly going to make, it is truly a path to a better life, personally and professionally, a better business, absolutely. And I truly believe if we get enough people doing this, it leads to a better world. If we all can be a little more aware of how we're impacting others and how we're impacting ourselves, a lot of good things can come out of that. So the last thing I want to talk about is this experience and this culture that people are in right now, in the here and now, and then the impact that we as conscious leaders have on this environment. Conscious leaders create a place where people want to be, an environment where people want to be, and they feel they can thrive, and they feel they can be successful, they feel they can be themselves. So then in turn, they can be creative, they can be innovative, they can bring up new ideas and help solve issues and help solve the root issues that people are having within the organizations. And culture is 100% a competitive advantage. Again, I go back to how you treat your people now in the midst of a global pandemic and crises that are going on around our country is directly related to how long they're going to stay with your company after this is done. And so if we can create that environment where people are thriving, they feel cared for, they feel like they're in a trusting environment, they can trust their leaders, guess what? They're going to be grateful for that. They're going to be loyal to you, and they're going to want to stick within your company after the fact, after the dust has settled, and whatever the new here and now is in the future. And so there's a lot of different studies that are being done around culture and the employee experience and the impact it has on business results, directly related to revenue and profitability of organizations. And it has been said that companies with positive cultures are outperforming their competition by 3 to 4 times. That's real results. That's real money that we're talking about. So when people say, oh, culture, yeah, not a big deal, or it's fluffy stuff, it's real. And it makes a big difference. And so one thing that we like to, as we've been going through over the years at Keystone, doing business strategy, what we've realized is that people need a culture strategy as well. They need both. You got to have a culture strategy, you got to have a business strategy. If you have this awesome business strategy, these great goals, these great plans, seems perfect for your market, for your target market, you don't have the people and the culture to back it up and to support that, and that are rowing the boat in the same direction with you, you're never going to actually fulfill that entire business plan. You just won't. And so if you have the culture, the employee experience to back it up, absolutely, you're going to hit those results. So what we did at Keystone is created our own culture model that has 20 different elements of what is culture. Because this is the number one thing. People say, well, culture is about having fun. Well, yes, that's one part of 20 different elements within culture that's impactful, but it is not the only thing. And so this kind of outlines a variety of different things that are important within the culture. And so what I've done on your worksheet there is there's a few additional items there asking about how you'd rate your current company culture and why. And then looking through the different elements of our culture model, and then listing out what are areas where you feel like you're meeting expectations with your culture and why, how. And then what are 3 areas of improvement you feel need to be done within your culture? And then why did you choose these? And so what we have is a foundational elements. If you're lacking in any one of those areas, absolutely that's where you need to focus your attention first. Clarity of vision. Do your people understand where you're going and why you're going where you're going? Are your leadership skills up to par? Are you being a conscious leader? Are your leaders being conscious leaders right now? Accountability. Are you holding yourself accountable? Are your people holding themselves accountable? Are your leaders holding their people accountable? Communication. The vast majority of issues that happen within organizations can be narrowed down to communication issues. Almost every single one of them. So are there communication breakdowns? Are there silos within your companies? Are departments not talking to one another enough and not open with each other enough? Purpose. Do you understand what the purpose and value is of your business and what you do to help others within the community, within your 4 walls of your business or with your customers? And do you share that with your people? And then trust, which we've talked about. And again, the best 3 ways to initially build trust is by building relationships, being consistent, and using good judgment or using your expertise. Those are 3 ways. And again, we don't have to be perfect. 60% of the time or more, we need to be doing those things. That's going to build trust within our companies. So again, I'd ask you just to look through these, see where you're strong, see where you're weak and you need some improvements, and take some time to write those down and dig into them a little bit more. So it's a new here and now. There's always a new here and now, no matter where we're at. And I firmly believe that conscious leadership is a competitive advantage. It starts with you doing things different, thinking about things differently, thinking through those tough questions, thinking through your ability to be an emotionally intelligent leader and growing in areas that you're struggling, where you feel you're struggling right now. So I really want you to take some time to reflect on the emotional intelligence assessment and an area that you really want to work on. Take some time, set a time to think through some or all of those tough questions. And then also pick one area within your culture that you're going to start improving right away. So that's the last page of that worksheet is your action items for today. And I would encourage you, before you move on, before you do anything else, unless you have a 9 o'clock meeting here, I'd encourage you to spend a few minutes working through those action item lists and figuring out where do you want to go from here and what are you going to commit to do something different. Because if we don't do something different, nothing's going to change. And if nothing's going to change, our businesses are going to stay where they're at. Our leadership skills are going to stay where they're at. And we're not going to get out of survival mode into thriving mode. So with that, I will just open it up. I'm open to questions. I don't know if there's anything that came in on the chat. If people, you can either just speak up or write a question in chat if there's anything that we want to talk about. We have a few extra minutes here.
This was awesome, Chelsey. Thank you so much. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Erin.
it. One thing I want to talk about, especially as we're going into the end of the year, 2020, we just want to be done with, I think most of us, but we enter into a new year and there are things that are going to carry over. It doesn't just like wipe our slate clean because the clock turns to midnight on New Year's. What can we do now to other than meditation, what are some of your suggestions to do as leaders to kind of refocus, reset, like retrain our minds to think towards a future and wipe that slate clean as much as possible?
Yes. Awesome question. I could not agree more. So many people have said, oh, 2020, it's the worst year. Let's just get to new year. New year, guess what? Same problems. COVID's not going anywhere. Our crises aren't going anywhere. They're still going to be there. And so that's what I'm talking about in the here and now with where we're at today. What do we need to do to get beyond this, to get our companies, to get ourselves? Some of us are stuck in this personal rut and feel like we can't get out of it. So I think, the understanding where you're at, understanding where your business or your team, depending what role you play in your company, where that's at right now, and then developing a plan. What is my personal, and I would recommend having two. What is my personal goals for 2021? And I'm not talking about New Year's resolutions. I do not believe in New Year's resolutions. I believe in creating a strategy and then setting milestones to hit. So what is my personal goals for 2021? What are my professional goals? What are my business goals? What is my business strategy for 2021? We always should have business strategies and personal strategies to help us grow and help us move forward, but it's never been more important than it is right now. And realizing that we might need to pivot. We might have this plan and we might need to pivot it, and that's okay. But when we have a plan in place and we have milestones to hit, I'm a big fan of having an annual plan and then have quarterly rocks or quarterly goals to hit. Write them down, hold yourself accountable to them, set meetings on your calendar for each quarter to come back and review. Okay, here's what I did this last quarter. Here's what I'm gonna do this next quarter. All of this working toward my annual goal is. If we have a plan in place, it's the same thing as writing a to-do list. You might be getting all overwhelmed and all up in your head about things and feeling really stressed out. The moment you go and write everything down that you have to do on a to-do list, you just feel better because it's all written out. It's out of your brain and dumped onto a piece of paper. So it's the same thing with our businesses and with trying to move things forward and getting out of this stuck in this fog and this whatever is 2020. Come up with a plan for 2021 and then work the plan. Don't just post it on a wall and forget about it, or yet stuff it in a drawer and forget about it. Actually revisit it every single quarter or more frequently. Anything else?
Chelsey, it was interesting in our last session, which was focusing on kind of self-care through the pandemic. We talked about the same issues of kind of backing up and repairing some of those holes and just accepting that this has happened. And forgiveness might be a little strong term, but just accepting it and being able to move forward from that point. And I think it echoes with just what you were saying. I know.
And this, just real quick, one other thing with that, with accepting where you're at, is also being grateful and showing gratitude for the things that are good. And we talk about creating that positive, optimistic environment and culture within your company. It starts with talking about the things that are good. Because guess what? Everything doesn't suck right now. There are good things going on personally, professionally, in the world. You got to pull them out though, because they're not blasted in front of you like all the bad things are. So finding things to be grateful for, finding joy in small things helps from an individual perspective, and then helps raise up that level of optimism and positivity within your companies too. So gratitude, accepting where you're at, 100%, those are very powerful things to do.
Other questions from the group? I appreciate you putting your contact information in there, Chelsey, and I assume you're more than delighted to accept emails and questions
Absolutely.
downstream. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love if anyone has questions or wants to talk through anything further. I'd be more than happy to talk with you about any of the topics we talked about today.
Okay. Well, I know we could probably talk about this all day, as you do for a living. And, we've scratched the surface, and based on our guests and participants today, maybe we'll find the best angle to continue this sort of discussion moving forward. So.
Sounds great. Thank you everyone for coming and participating. I appreciate it. And again, reach out if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns or anything. I'd love to talk.
Thanks so much, Chelsey.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Chelsey.
Bye.